Hello Rockstars, I'm Allie, your RockStarBarGirl, and today we are talking about liqueurs. And this is super exciting. Because liqueurs are exciting? No, not really. But this is the last in the Basics 101 videos. So if you've been following along in the Basics 101 series, we have gotten to video number 5. And I promised that I would break down everything you need to know about the fundamentals of bartending in 5 easy steps. We learned how to pour, we learned about glassware, our bar tools and setup. Last week we learned about liquors, and today we're learning about liqueurs. So, what is a liqueur? A liqueur, sometimes also called a cordial, is an alcohol that contains somewhere around 30% sugar. As I mentioned in the last video, it is the sweet and flavorful counterpart to our alcohols. Now, just like our liquors, there are tons of liqueurs out there. Lots of different options that your bar can choose from, and of course a lot of different brands that they can go with to get the desired flavors that they'd like to have at their bar. Today we're just going to go over the basics. We'll cover the basics cordials that you'll have probably on your speed rack or your well, or definitely at your bar, and then we'll talk about some brand name cordials that you'll also want to know. So here we have an example of our most common cordials that you're going to find on your rack or your speed well, or just somewhere at your bar. But basically, remember when we learned about our well liquors, our no-name brand liquors for our vodka, gin, rum, tequila, brandy, and whiskey? Well, you can sort of think of these as the most common well cordials. If you were to sell them alone, they would be about the same price as a well liquor. They're no-name brands, and they're just going to be sitting around your bar in excess. You should have a lot of these laying around because you use these cordials in making cocktails a lot. So, to start off, we have triple sec. Triple sec you are guaranteed to have. You'll probably have it at every well behind the bar. Triple sec is an orange flavored liqueur. It's clear in color, but the flavor is orange, and you use it a lot. You use it in, I want to say maybe like 25% of the cocktails that you ever make. So you want to have triple sec around, and you definitely will. Triple sec's cousin is blue Curacao. That'll take some time to learn to say. Blue Curacao. Some people also call it blue triple sec, and that's exactly what it is. It is blue in color, but it is orange flavored, just like your triple sec. And the reason you have blue Curacao at your bar is because it has the mild orange flavor that triple sec has, which means it goes well in many of the cocktails you'll be making, but it gives you that bright electric blue color that you need for cocktails like Blue Long Islands. And behind your bar, this is probably going to be the only thing that you carry that is blue in color. So just like you're pretty much always going to have triple sec, you're probably also going to always have blue Curacao. Next, we have sour apple pucker. And triple sec and blue Curacao are weird because they have funny names, but sour apple pucker and all of the rest of your typical well American cordials are labeled exactly what they are. So sour apple pucker tastes like sour apple, peach schnapps tastes like peach, amaretto tastes like almonds. So it's fairly obvious what flavor they're going to be. But just so that we're clear, sour apple has a tart apple flavor to it. It's not going to taste like apple juice or biting into a red apple, but it's going to be a sweet sort of candy sour apple flavor that you'll typically use for things like apple martinis. Next, I mentioned amaretto. Amaretto is just the Italian word for almonds. It's brown in color, and the flavor is, you guessed it, almond. And then we have peach schnapps, clear in color, and again, the flavor is peach. So these are a good example of the cordials you should expect to see at your bar that you'll use all the time in cocktails. And of course, you will have other flavor options. All you have to do is take a look at the label, read it, and you'll know exactly what it tastes like so you can figure out what cocktail it should go in. As an example of some other no-name or well cordials that you might expect to have at your bar, here we have Peppermint, Butterscotch Schnapps, and Banana Liqueur. And just like I said before, these are typical no-name brand cordials, the flavors of which are going to be apparent right from the label. So if you see these laying around your bar, all you have to do is pick them up, read the label, and you'll know exactly what they taste like. So just like with your liquors, you have your no-name brand, run-of-the-mill flavors, and then you're going to have some call brands and possibly even some premium name brands that you should be familiar with. Now when it comes to name brand cordials, like I mentioned, the list goes on, and it would take a little while for us to cover them all. But I thought I would just quickly touch on a few of the most popular. So let's get started over here. I'm starting over here on this side with the Grand Marnier from France, because your Grand Marnier is basically like the premium or call, depending on how your bar prices it, the premium or call version of your triple sec. It is a cognac-based liqueur, but it is orange in flavor. And in cases where you need to make a cocktail that is what we call top shelf, rather than using triple sec, Grand Marnier might be an option. The next cordial that we have is Midori. Of course, you might have a run-of-the-mill, no-name brand melon liqueur, but you might also carry this name brand that's very popular. It's from Japan, it's bright green in color, and the flavor is melon. Next, we have Southern Comfort. You are probably going to always work with Southern Comfort. It's a very popular American cordial. The flavor is peaches and honey, and it's sort of reddish brown in color. Next, we have Jagermeister, another cordial that you're almost guaranteed to have at your bar. It's a German cordial. It's really, really dark in color, and the flavor is licorice. It's really popular for things like Jaeger and Red Bull, or bomb shots, which we'll learn about, called Jaeger bombs. And Jagermeister, like pretty much all German cordials, are best served chilled. So in many bars, you might store this in the fridge. So when you walk into your first date, if you don't see the Jagermeister, check the fridge. That's probably where it is. Next, we have another German cordial. Again, best kept cold, probably down in the fridge, and that's Rumpelminz. Rumpelminz is a peppermint schnapps. Rumpelminz is a great example of something that, like Midori, you might have a no-name brand of. Remember the peppermint schnapps we looked at a second ago? But your bar might be interested in carrying name brands, because those tend to get requested more often than just the generic peppermint schnapps. So look around your bar for Rumpelminz. Another cordial you want to be familiar with is Goldschlager. Goldschlager is cool for two reasons. First, it's famous for being the liquor that has gold flakes in the bottom. And I believe that those gold flakes are real. They're 24 karat, like edible gold leaf, like what you might see on a fancy wedding cake. It's not worth anything, but it is real, and so that's pretty cool. It's also best kept cold, so again, check the fridge for it. Its flavor is cinnamon, kind of like an intense red hot candy cinnamon flavor. And what's cool about Goldschlager is it illustrates the point that not all cordials are necessarily low in alcohol. Sometimes people think that just because something's really, really sweet, that means it's not going to have a lot of alcohol. But actually, Goldschlager is 100 proof, which, if you remember from our liquors video, is stronger than most of the vodkas that you work with. So just be careful when you're pouring your liqueurs that you take a look at the label. Not everything that is sweet is low in alcohol, and you want to know that when you're serving customers. Next, we have an example of Kahlua. Kahlua is a very popular cordial, brown in color, and coffee is the flavor. And then finally, we have another cordial you're almost guaranteed to have, which is Bailey's. Bailey's is really different from all of these cordials because it's a cream-based cordial. So when you pour it, it's going to be white and creamy in color, and you definitely want to keep it in the fridge. Even though it has a really high sugar content, which helps it be preserved and helps its shelf life, you want to keep it in the fridge anyway, because at the end of the day, it still has cream in it and it could go bad. So these are an example of some of the most popular cordials out there. At your bar, your brand name cordials are probably going to be grouped together on your back bar. So I would recommend going over to the back bar, taking a look at what you have, and reading the label if there's anything that looks unfamiliar. And finally, I want to touch on lime juice and grenadine. Of course, I want to be clear, there is no alcohol in lime juice or grenadine. They are not liqueurs. But I wanted to mention them in this video because they are a primary source or a constant source of flavor in a lot of your cocktails. Of course, lime juice is lime flavored, but rather than tasting like fresh lime juice squeezed from limes, it's a concentrated lime syrup. So it's very, very sweet and sour at the same time. Grenadine is a concentrated cherry syrup. So again, rather than tasting like fresh cherries that have been squeezed, it tastes like a really sweet cherry flavored syrup. And we use these two sweeteners in a lot of your cocktails. I want to mention them because it's important that you understand that when you're making cocktails, you should treat them more like liqueurs than you would a juice. Even though there is no alcohol in them, lime juice and grenadine are not juicers. So what do I mean by that? Let's say, for example, someone orders a tequila on the rocks with a splash of lime juice. Or perhaps they don't even say with a splash, they just say tequila on the rocks with lime juice. You would grab a rocks glass, add 1.5 ounces of tequila, and then you would add about a 1 count of your lime juice and nothing more. The same way you would add a 1 count or so of your liqueurs to give your cocktail a flavor, you would do the same thing with your lime juice. You would not grab a highball glass and you would not fill an entire glass to the top with lime juice the way you would with orange juice or cranberry. It's way too concentrated, way too sweet and intense in flavor for you to treat it like a juice. So, even though grenadine and lime juice do not have any alcohol in them, you're going to pour them the way you would a liqueur, so it's important that we cover them in this lesson. So that wraps up our liqueurs lesson, aka cordials. Yay! We're done with our Basics 101 videos. Those are our 5 fundamentals. We covered how to pour, glassware, tools, liquors, and liqueurs. So if you've been following along, get excited because from here on out, we're going to be talking about drink recipes, speed tips, and other things that you need to know to help you get a rock star bartending job. If you found this video helpful, definitely make sure that you like it. Comment below if you have any questions or if there's anything you'd like to mention about the liqueurs that we covered today. Remember to educate yourself. Look through your local liquor store or check out your neighborhood bars for other liqueurs. And of course, subscribe, subscribe, subscribe. Subscribe to this channel. The next video that will be coming out will be our highball cocktails. So we're going to be diving right into drink recipes, and you're going to definitely want to know when that next video comes out. So, as always, I will check you guys in the next video. Bye, Rockstars.